All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Budget and Finance Committee's consideration of the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23. We're coming into the home stretch now, and I just wanted to preface our presentations, members. About 10 years ago, when I became chair of the committee, our neighborhood councils had no real participation in the budget process, or at least in the council's part of the budget process, other than during the public comment period. And I felt that it was important because these because our neighborhood councils are a part of the policy-making process of the city. They are part of the city family, that they should play a more active role in the budget process. And so we have since then invited our neighborhood councils to participate at the table in this process. At that time, when we started it, the neighborhood council budget advocates were organized and actively reviewing the budgets and dealt a lot with the mayor. We brought them in to council to participate in our process as well. Since that time, there have been within the neighborhood council movement, there have been other voices that have come to the fore about our budget, and there are now neighborhood council budget tribunes as well. So what we're going to do is this is going to be the section of our meeting dealing with budget advocacy from our neighborhood councils. And so I'm going to invite up first the neighborhood council budget advocates to make a presentation to us, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them. This will be about a 10-minute or so presentation, and then we'll go into questions. And then when the budget advocates and our questions have concluded, we'll invite the budget tribunes to come up similarly and present on the budget, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask them questions as well. And if there are any other representatives of neighborhood councils here today, presidents of neighborhood councils who wish to be heard separately, then we can accommodate that as well. So we'll begin with the neighborhood council budget advocates. Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience.
Good afternoon, Chairman Krikorian, members of the committee. Thank you for once again inviting the neighborhood council budget advocates to participate in this process. It's always been appreciated. And just as a reminder, especially for some of the new members, the genesis is actually 20 years ago when Mayor Hahn convened through the Congress of Neighborhoods a session that dealt with the budget as part of the Congress, and then during those last 2 years of his term, engaged the neighborhood councils, and then that was followed by Mayor Villaraigosa, and where we actually evolved to where we are now in terms of we used to meet in the mayor's press room. We used to be staffed by mayor's staffer until it was transitioned over to the 20th floor, and that staffer got moved into the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. So this has been a evolutionary process that we got to 10 years ago. We had bylaws, we had formal structure with each of the neighborhood councils designating budget reps, and they elect the budget advocates. So we, as you know us in the last 10 years, but there was, and so we do appreciate that opportunity. And as you know, the white paper that we've developed has also been a more than 10-year project that we've annually presented to the mayor and to the city council, and those are posted on our website at budgetadvocates.org. So with that, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Glenn Bailey. I'm one of the two co-chairs of the budget advocates for this year, and I'd like to introduce our other co-chair, Jennifer Goody.
Steal your mic. Hi. As Glenn said, Glenn and I are co-chairs of the Budget Advocates. We have been busy this year engaging and educating neighborhood council board members, stakeholders, and members of the public on topics related to the city's budget. The Budget Advocates delivered our white paper and departmental reports to you last month. We've also brought some additional reports today, including white paper recommendations by theme, Budget Advocates' recommendations on revenues and efficiencies, and concerns expressed by Budget Day 2021 attendees. Those are in the blue binders that you received just prior to us reconvening from the recess. Overall, the city's outlook is not as dire as was feared. We'd like to focus our attention today on ways to ensure that remains the case and smaller changes that can be made that would have a great impact on Angelenos. I introduced to you Jack Humphreyville, a previous Budget Advocate co-chair, and Kay Hartman, vice chair of Outreach, who will continue our presentation. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Hi. The Budget Advocates make two primary recommendations. Balance the budget without relying on the reserve fund, and do not enter into any labor agreements that result in a deficit. All of this may require budget cuts as the year goes on. The Budget Advocates recommend that cuts, if they come, not be across the board. The departments on which the other departments rely, such as personnel and ITA, should be spared. Employees of the personnel department contributed many hours during the pandemic working on the vaccine mandate. This took precious time away from filling the city's open positions. Recovery doesn't happen automatically, especially when considering that personnel was already underfunded compared with the size of its mandate. While working with the departmental reports, we learned from 23 out of the 27 departments we interviewed that insufficient support from personnel was a problem for them. They don't blame personnel, as they understand they are doing the best they can with what they have. The departments need more to be effective organizations to deliver services to Los Angeles' residents. At some point, the city is going to have to bite the bullet and modernize. The departments cannot deliver on their promise to the city without modern hardware and software. While some modernization is completed, more is needed, and then the city needs to keep pace with technological advances. We understand that ITA helped keep the city running by transitioning workers to virtual in a very short time when the lockdown started. It was a heroic effort. Now we need to pay back the favor by giving them the budget they need to fulfill their mandate. Also, the city should not slow down on its infrastructure repairs because infrastructure problems can lead to costly lawsuits. Our streets, sidewalks, and sewer system are in dire straits. A dollar spent now will save multiple dollars in the future. The city needs to develop a comprehensive plan for fixing existing problems and keeping pace with new ones. The Olympics will cause additional infrastructure needs. 2028 will be here before we know it, and we need to start building for it now. We need to make a good impression. Given the city's well-publicized ethics issues, the Budget Advocates ask that the city strengthen the ethics department by increasing its authority and independence. We should not settle for less. Give the ethics department the ability to place legislation directly on the ballot as they do in San Francisco and other cities. Give them their own independent legal counsel outside of the city attorney. Give them a steady source of funding not under city influence. Los Angeles was ranked highest in the nation for natural disasters in FEMA's 2020 Natural Risk Index. And while experts on urban emergency response recommend that cities the size of Los Angeles have 100 people for their emergency management, as of November 2021, the Emergency Management Department had 18 filled positions. We ask that, in addition to proper funding and access to immediate funds in emergencies, the EMD develop a 5-year plan to bring itself up to the basic level of being able to protect Los Angeles, and that the City Council work with the department to implement it. To save lives, we urge the creation of a revolving fund of $10 million that can be drawn on without delays.
Jack.
My turn. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Great. My name is Jack Humphreyville. I'm a stakeholder in the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council, and I'm also a budget advocate. Kay just mentioned the Emergency Management Department. That gets into the reserve fund. We suggest that the 10% not be a goal, but an absolute policy. LA is considered to be one of the most highly prone city in the country to be prone to natural disasters, earthquakes, mudslides, fires, pandemics. I'm sure we can, I'm sure in LA we have 5 seasons as opposed to the 4 seasons that they normally associate with California. But having this reserve fund, we almost ran out. If it wasn't for the federal government, we were going to, the Budget Stabilization Fund was going to be toast, and the reserve fund was going to be toast, and it was going to be probably pretty ugly. So 10% as a policy, not a goal. I think another concern there is that over the last year, during boom times, the city has taken $190 million out of the reserve fund. That seems counterintuitive. When you have fat times, you ought to be putting money away. I guess another concern is that if like last year, the city council budget was higher than the mayor's, and that resulted in dinging the reserve fund for a couple $100 million. One of the concerns is that if you read all these budget memos, everybody wants more money. Everybody has a great cause. I think we need to be very careful. Pensions are another thing. Mr. Kokorian, I must admit I don't necessarily agree with you. Our pensions are in much better shape than the peers, especially the OPEBs, the medical funds that are significantly better funded than everybody else. You take the county and they got a, $25 billion liability. The state has a $100 billion liability, and our liability is peanuts compared to that. I think we need to thank Ron Deaton and Keith Comrie, who in the late 80s put in this fund. God bless them. I think the other thing, one of the things we're calling for is a pension commission, and that was recommended by the LA 2020 Commission back in 2014. Unfortunately, it never made it to a council file. It was never heard in front of the Personnel Committee or the Budget and Finance Committee. This year we had fat returns, give or take 32% in fire and police and 29% in lacers. Nevertheless, actuarial, we still have a $9 billion budget shortfall. That's 84% funded. The way I look at it, on a mark-to-market, we're in much better shape. I think we're 97% funded, and I think we got a $2 billion shortfall on a mark-to-market basis, which I think is the way to go. My friend Warren Buffett would definitely say that. But I think that having a pension, couldn't resist. The pension commission, it is complicated. I've spent a lot of time doing it. We hire Siegel every year. Everybody has different opinions on it. And I think the pension commission would sort of, give a little more transparency as to what's going on. And secondly, I think it could probably come up with some fairly decent recommendations. One thing that's going to happen this year is you heard Neil Guglielmo talk about that they're losing money this year. If there's a 3% shortfall, that's going to add $5 to $6 billion to the unfunded pension liability. I guess the final area that I want to talk about is the outlook. One of the things I'm amazed at is the revenues that happened this year, and I just hope that we have a problem like the state, where revenues are going to be substantially higher than they expected. I think the states went from $43 to $68 billion surplus. I mean, that's a high grade problem. Over the next 4 years, I think it's the CAO's outlook projected a $1.4 billion surplus, cumulative surplus. There are concerns. One, can we continue the growth in revenues, which I think grow at a compounded rate of 3%? Expenses are growing compounded at about 1.5%. So obviously we have a positive spread there. But there's issues with regards to revenue. With regards to expenses, I think we have to be very concerned about labor agreements. And if you look in October of 19, when we entered into the agreement with the cops and the firefighters, the surplus of $200 million over the following 4 years turned into about $1.2 billion shortfall. Plus, it resulted in a $150 to $200 million shortfall in the current fiscal year. Another thing I think we have to worry about is inflation. Who the hell knows what's going to go in there? But I can just imagine you guys pulling your hair out on the petroleum prices. downstairs or around the city, just, that could be 30, 40, $50 million. I think the other one is, I'm going to steal this from you, Mr. Krikorian, is mission creep, something that you mentioned a couple of years ago. The city's job is in very many ways public safety, infrastructure, and planning. We can get into a lot of social issues and things that are all worthwhile programs, but are those things that are the responsibility of the city. I think another issues that we need to look at when you look at the 4-year budget is if you adjusted the pension plans to have a 6% rate of return. By the way, CalPERS I think is 6.8 now, 6.8%. You adjust that, and you adjust for what I would call proper infrastructure spending. We would come out with negative numbers throughout there, significantly bigger numbers. So that concludes my remarks, and I guess on behalf of my people to the right of me, we'd like to thank you for your time and hope you will consider our recommendations. If you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you very much. Does that complete?
We're under 10. We're trying to do 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Very efficient. Appreciate it. Members, questions for the budget advocates? Mr. De Leon, you're good? Okay. Mr. Blumenfield?
Well, not so many questions, but just comments. I mean, I always appreciate reading the white paper, the budget advocates, and work with you on the annual budget summit I was at earlier this year, and I feel like this is a discussion that we have that's not just today during this process, but is an ongoing discussion, and I do appreciate that, and look forward to continuing that dialogue beyond today, and just appreciate when folks who are volunteering their time are coming forward to make our city better, and who are digging in and looking at the tough issues that we're facing. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for you for doing that. And a lot of the things that you point out, and a lot of the things that we've been doing this year are as a result of that. So thank you.
Councilmember Blumenfield, first of all, thank you so much for being a keynote speaker at Budget Day. It's actually last August, so I know it may seem like it was this fiscal year. But we appreciate that. We frequently have the Chairman Krikorian, but it was great to have you there. And just so you know, everyone knows that those are recorded and posted on our website. So your presentation, your comments, the dialogue on the panel lives on at budgetadvocates.org, so folks can relive that. And we are planning our next Budget Day on June 18th, and everyone is invited to participate in that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Price?
I too just want to thank the team for stepping up, giving us input, good ideas, suggestions. We do appreciate them. Appreciate your input. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez? Questions?
No, just thank you for your time. I think some of the collection of feedback from all the different participants and all the stakeholders, I think, is really valuable. Often we hear it from our constituents as well, and I think we're in agreement on some of the priority tenets. It's a matter of making sure that we can fund all of those priorities and balance out all of our needs, which is always the biggest, most challenging part of the job. But just thankful for your making the time and producing this very insightful document.
Thank you for acknowledging the feedback that the raw feedback that we put in there from the stakeholders in the various regions. The regional breakouts is a very important part of Budget Day, and we were very happy to be able to provide you with that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to make note of that, because I think so often it's challenging and you all know this because based on a volunteer effort, having the participation of the diversity from every corner of the city is a very, very big challenge, particularly through the course of the pandemic, when so many families, like in my district where you have a digital divide, it makes it very difficult for folks to participate and to help ensure that their voices are taken into account. So I understand the inherent challenges with that, and you could see the range and the diversity of the comments. And all of those things. I remind everyone, each of our districts, roughly 270,000 people, we have to make decisions that are best attuned to supporting the needs of every Angelino, given the limited resources that we have. But again, I appreciated that collection of that feedback and with the breakouts of what part of the city they were from.
It was very important to us to have representation from across the city. We were thrilled to have participation in our virtual events from members and stakeholders of 94 out of the 99 NCs this year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we also had members of the press, city staff, and elected officials that were part of the audience for our various town halls. And the town hall that we had with controller candidates, I believe, was the only one with all 7 controller candidates present.
Well, that's great. Anything else? I think this is, at least I don't remember seeing the sort of raw accumulation of stakeholder comments in previous years. I don't know if this is the first year you've done it, but I think it is helpful and instructive for all the reasons Ms. Rodriguez just described.
We will endeavor to include it in the future.
Great. But the flip side of that also, it needs to be said, is sometimes the broad range of comments like that are going to be all over the map. There are going to be a whole variety of levels of informedness, about the comments. And I think this process that you go through within the neighborhood council movement of receiving that fire hose of comment and information and then gleaning from that where there's, maybe not consensus, but at least, widespread views, let's say, and maybe there's differences of those views, but at least they're widespread. And I think that's very helpful. And the other thing is, and for those who maybe haven't followed the work of the budget advocates, the volunteers who do this, all of you and all of the others who do this, spend countless hours digging into, as we do with our blue books, they dig into the minutia of departmental budgets over the course of months leading up to this. And, I think that process alone is really important, regardless of whether you ever communicate anything to us or not, just so that you become the grassroots experts on what a city budget actually is, what's in it, where are the deficiencies in it, what are the practical constraints in our ability to solve what seem like common sense things that people always scratch their heads and say, well, why hasn't the city done this? Well, a lot of times there's important reasons for that. And some of them are what Jack just described. And, the fact that we could do a lot of things, but we have cities have missions, and those missions may be different than what the state government has, or the federal government, or the county government, or Metro. We all are in our own lane, and so I think the fact that you're having those conversations is informative to the neighborhood councils and to their stakeholders, the public as a whole. And then when you come back to us with your white paper recommendations, I get that sometimes it's probably got to be maddening that you come up with, a whole long list of recommendations, and, it takes a while before some of those maybe become reality, or sometimes they don't. But that also is the nature of municipal government. And sometimes when I make suggestions and they get passed by the council by a unanimous vote, it still takes a long while after that for that to get implemented. It's just, some of that is the way that the wheels of government work. And so I hope that frustration doesn't diminish your commitment to engagement, because sometimes it's the same reason we have an innovation commission. Sometimes people come up with ideas in the public, our employees and so on, who just think outside of the box about an approach to a problem. And sometimes those ideas can be implemented in a way that makes a remarkable difference. Sometimes they don't, but we have that so that we can get out of our silo of thinking a little bit. And I think, the white papers serve that same kind of function. They force the city's family to think beyond, well, because we've always done it that way. And that's not an acceptable answer to me ever. The fact that we've always done it that way is not a good answer. So anyway, sorry, that's more of a rant than a question. Yeah, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman Krikorian, for those comments. We understand that when you're asking for more services that cost money, and the city frequently doesn't have that extra money, you have to search hard for it, right? It doesn't just grow on trees. But what we do in our events and in the outreach that you've gotten some detailed comments on that, is probably mostly service related. The folks who are from neighbor councils or stakeholders, they're commenting about their trees not being trimmed as frequently as they'd like, or sidewalks being repaired, or streets, police. They're seeing it from the service perspective, but they're not drilling down. I don't expect them to be reading 1,200 pages of budget books, right? So our structure is that we are listening. We identify those concerns. Ideally, our committees that meet with each of the city departments are aware of those concerns so that they can have a conversation with the departments about that, and the departments can say, yeah, we're working on that, or yeah, we need more money, or we can solve whatever. That's part of the process. And also, our structure with working with the 12 service regions of the Department of Labor Empowerment, and the way we structure is we have 3 budget advocates that are assigned for amongst those neighborhood councils. So your staff, when your council staff is going to those neighborhood councils, you may hear the budget advocates give a report, but we're also there to listen. We're there to listen to what the board members say, what the stakeholders say, what your staff says, and kind of bring that all back to ultimately put into the white paper, but also our other work as well. So and we do start this, literally, we start this with the new group in July. Just like the city starts, you've adopted the budget, and you're literally looking forward to that. So for us, it is a year-round effort, even though we may be only meeting with the departments over a 4 or 5 month period. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your work. Anything else, members? Anything else? Thank you very much. Really appreciate your being with us. Thanks very much for your time and for your patience. Sorry for the delays today. All right, I'd like to invite up next the